Hey everyone, David Neagle here with the Successful Mind Podcast, another episode. We have Rosanne Austin. She is a repeat offender on our podcast. I wanted to bring her back because since the last time that we interviewed her, she's just keeps making more astounding progress, which I'm gonna let her talk all about that. I'm not gonna talk about it, but we wanted to share her wins with you and what she's been doing and what she's learning. And to remind everybody, this all started with, the Art of Success and working with our company and working her way into being a private client. And she's part of our TEM group, and she has been for a long time now. So we wanted to share that with you. And again, the reason for me doing this is for you, the audience, to realize that we're all real people and that you can do this too. And we'd be excited to work with you if that's something you're interested in. So, Rosanne, welcome back to the Successful Mind Podcast. Would you tell everybody who you are and a little bit about yourself?
Well, it's an honor to be asked back, David. It really is. It's super special to me too, because it's given me an opportunity to reflect on the successes that have happened since the last time I was on. So thank you for that, for sharing in that honor with me. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Rosanne Austin. I'm the creator of the Fearlessly Fertile Method. I am a former California state prosecutor turned fertility coach. And I've been doing this work for just over 10 years now. And I work with women who are struggling with fertility. And the piece of the fertility puzzle that I help them with is mindset.
Mindset. Who would ever think in a million years that mindset has anything to do with fertility? We know that mindset has a little bit to do with what initiates fertility, but what does it actually have to do with fertility itself?
It's everything, David. And I found this out through my own 7-year struggle with fertility. And fertility it all starts in our brain. It all starts with what we believe. And we have not been taught to use our mind when it comes to healing ourselves. And it's funny because I was looking at some of the most recent data. 1 in 5 couples now are struggling with fertility. And if it was simply a matter of getting the right treatment, diet, lotion, or potion, not one of us would struggle. But the reality is that the mind and body work together. And the data shows that. I know that from my own coaching practice and from my own fertility success when medicine had given up on me. And it's one of the most underutilized, incredible superpowers that couples have in their fertility arsenal. And my work is about getting the message out and shouting it from the rooftops.
If somebody had been going through the same journey you went through with fertility, and we know that thousands of women all over the world, maybe even more than that, go through this journey, I think the last thing that they would be thinking is like the desperate end would be, let me look at my mindset. What is it that caused you to actually even consider that as having anything to do with getting pregnant?
Well, it was me using my trial attorney brain. So back when my husband and I were struggling to have our son, I was trying every treatment I could get my hands on, David. If there was a folk remedy, a meditation, a yoga pose, or somebody that I needed to see, I was going to go and do it. So what I was doing unknowingly is I was completely focusing on the physical. And I had that nailed. We were going to a top 10 teaching hospital. We were sparing no expense with our treatments. But what I realized is that, okay, if I'm doing all those things and nothing is working, what am I not seeing? And that was a really humbling question for me to ask, because I thought I had my act together. I thought I had covered all my bases, but I had this giant block and I wasn't looking at myself. And when I did a little bit of soul searching, I looked and I saw, wait a second, I was going into every single one of these treatments expecting to fail. I also secretly believed that I was greedy and that I was selfish for wanting a career, love, money and a baby. Like, I thought to myself, well, I had been given so many other gifts. Like, who am I to have all of these things and the baby that I wanted so badly?
Okay.
And yeah, so that's how I started looking in that area.
What were the doctors telling you at that point, though?
They were telling me that it was over, that I needed donor eggs, that I was too old, that I should just adopt. But there was something in me, David, that when I was presented with that, and it was a tiny, tiny voice in me, was like, nope, none of that is true. And that made no sense, because on paper and with all of the litany of things that we had tried and the wake of treatments I had done, like, it seemed delusional. But at that point, I did not have any other options. Medicine had run out. I mean, unless I was ready to use donor eggs, which I wasn't, because there's something that felt out of alignment for me. Not like I
Yeah.
have any judgment on that. It's a beautiful
Right.
thing that
Right.
that families do. But for some reason,
But
something
it's not your child. I mean,
right.
genetically, it's not your child. So, let's just say what it is. I'm not judging anything, but it's not. So they're trying to get you to accept their perception of your situation. That's what they're trying to talk you into at this point.
Exactly. And I was made to feel silly for the possibility that something other than that could happen. But there was just something inside of me that kept saying, nope, that's not how your story ends.
So then what was the journey from there? When you're like, no, there's this other voice inside of me, there's another possibility here. What happened then?
So I started doing research, because I was like, okay, well, if it's me, can I really have an impact on me? Then I started looking at books talking about the mind-body connection, looking at the role of stress. What are the other things that can have an impact on my fertility? And I was blown away, David. There was this whole constellation of information that absolutely contradicted the information I was getting from what I call belovedly the white coats. The white coats were telling me to give up on myself.
Yeah.
But there was all of this other information. And I also heard this anecdotally from other people. Everyone, even people listening to this now, knows somebody who was told to give up, and this natural pregnancy happens. And I honestly believe, because once I dropped the drama about what was happening in my life, I had opened up a new set of possibilities. And that's exactly what happens when you start working on mindset and changing the perception.
Well, what's interesting about that is I have a very teeny bit of experience with the result that you got, because back in the 90s, I was working with a network marketing company that dealt with wellness care products from Japan. And a lot of it had to do with like aches and pains and inflammation and stuff like that. But what was interesting was that we started hearing from women who were not able to get pregnant, and this company had a sleep mattress that was supposed to go into deeper relaxation and remove inflammation and stuff. And actually, it was quite an amazing mattress to sleep on, I will say. But women started saying that once they started sleeping on that mattress, they started getting pregnant. And of course, everybody was going, oh, come on. But it was actually happening. And it was a weird thing. Now, of course, with the American Medical Association, they couldn't make any claims or anything like that. But people would go and they would give their testimony about stuff that happened. And many of them were using a lot of the technology up to that point. But here's something that's interesting. And I don't know if I've ever mentioned this part of the story to you before. Most MLMs are steeped in mindset. So a lot of the teaching that was going on for people that were getting their little individual businesses and trying to live a dream was about all possibilities. Like, anything is possible in their life. So while, yes, many of them were sleeping on this mattress, they were also hearing that they were in charge of their results by their thinking. And it was a lot. I mean, we used to, we all shared self-improvement books, positive thinking books. some of the top speakers in the world in the human development genre would come and speak at their conferences, and they were huge conferences, 20,000 people. So it was a very well-known practice. Well, it was actually my real introduction into self-development, professional development. So, but it was only when I was listening to you tell this, and I've heard you tell this story, I don't know how many times, that I just realized they were also getting this information along with this mattress. That's interesting. Like, I mean, it's not necessarily causation, but it's very interesting. So then you get pregnant, you have a child. How old is your son?
He just turned 7 the other day. And what's fascinating about that, David, is when I started implementing what I was learning about the mind-body connection, mindset, just exactly as you described it, seeing all possibility, I was more fertile in my 40s than I was in my 30s, which
That's
is crazy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's fascinating though that we just don't get this information at all. So one of the things that I decided was that I was going to do whatever I could in my professional life from that moment on to share what I had learned, and that's why I do what I do today.
Which is, I mean, it's really a hell of a transition from being like a top prosecuting attorney to, the fearlessly fertile method. Like that's, and I think it's a beautiful thing. I really do. The the thought that I was having about this though was, you just said we don't hear about this. And in my experience, it's because most people don't know about it. And the ones that do are shamed so bad for their opinions, right? And they're made, that's airy fairy, that's ooh, like it's just, junk science. It's that type of thing. And they never really get a foot in the ground as far as being able to explain to people what the possibility is for this. But that's changed with you.
Yes.
You have a foot in the ground, you have an audience, you have all kinds of women that have results, that bring babies to your conferences all over the world. And it's really starting to gain some traction. So there's two things that I wanted to tell everybody about. Not only did she find out that it was easy to get pregnant and have a child, she also found out that it was easy to become a millionaire in business, right?
Yes.
Which is a fascinating thing. And they're both there's similarities in both of these, in my mind anyway. I'm not a woman, but in my mind there's similarities. I think I have some expertise, being that I have 4 children, so I I know a little bit of what I'm talking about.
Certainly.
But in order for to have a child, and in order for money to come in your life, you have to be able to receive. You have to be able to openly receive, to let those things in. And for me, while I don't teach what you're teaching, my whole career has been because I had an extraordinary experience back in 93 where my income tripled in a month, when it should have never happened. Like, based on all the rules of life, it should have never happened. And it piqued my interest to an nth degree. And I began to study everything that I got my hands on. And then I dedicated my life to helping other people do the same thing. And that's how ultimately we met, because those two journeys, came together at some point. Do you think it was the same things that was blocking you from having a child that it was blocking you from the success that you truly wanted in your life and business?
Oh, 1,000%. Absolutely. And my ladies know me for shouting, conceiving is all about receiving all the time. And it's funny because once that journey had come to an end, it was another journey as an entrepreneur and as a person who serves at the level that I choose to serve. Because, and everyone thinks that once you get to baby, it's all over, right? That, I'll be happy, I'll be satisfied. But so much about what you teach and so much of what has shown to be true in my own life is the desire continues to go. It
Yes.
continues, like that is more life. The essence of more life, like we talk about in the science of getting rich, is this idea that we are meant to desire more. And so when I started doing my work, I had run up against so many limiting beliefs that I was greedy. Who's going to buy this? Who's going to listen to a former prosecutor on this subject? Because I don't have MD after my name. It's JD, but it's not MD.
Yeah.
And I'm not wearing a white coat. And I came from such a small perspective that I was unqualified to speak about something that was true in my life. But if you look at the results today and you look at the thousands upon thousands of women this work touches, it's quite the opposite. It's just fascinating. And it's funny because you had mentioned something earlier that people don't put much value on these stories. And I
Right.
pray for those people, David, because it's sad. Because
Yes.
why do real life people and their experiences, why do we value that less than studies that are manipulated, distorted, and paid for by people who have something to gain? Why do those have more value than, somebody that you meet in your everyday life saying, you can totally do this, you can get pregnant, I did it, here's what I did, those type of things. And so what my work stands for is very real women creating very real results that come as a result of real transformation, just like mine. And
Right.
so those skills that I use to call in a baby, I use now in business. So what I tell people all the time is, if you can call in a baby, running a business is a piece of cake because of what it took for you to call, in this baby by using mindset.
Well, that brings me to the point where I was going, which is, so you go through this process of waking up, you come to a different level of consciousness, you begin to change yourself, you get pregnant, you have this child, and then you realize your purpose is to take this message to the women of the world. But then the question is, well, how does someone actually do that, right? Especially since I just talked about how alternative ideas, there's a little bit more reception than there was 20, 30 years ago, but not a whole lot, right? So it's still pretty much out on the fringes of society. And in order to be able to do this in a way where you can reach these people, you need to have a successful business. So now you have to start thinking about everything from, as a businesswoman, how you're going to construct a business, run a business. How are you going to earn enough money to be able to expand this, to be able to touch more people? That's why I brought up the idea that you became a millionaire so quick, because most people will probably think, well, she's got something everybody wants, that's why she's a millionaire. It's like, no, that is not why she's a millionaire, because most people would never step into the realm of thinking about that possibility unless the message was right for them to be able to hear it. Yes, they want it, but they don't come to you traditionally. They go to the doctor. They go for the IVF. They go to the white coats, as you said. But you're changing that because you're being bold. You're passionate about your message. Tell everybody what's been happening with your world tour that you're on. So you've got a book, and now you're on a world tour, and people are coming to you from all over the world, and they're bringing babies that they've had because of you to meet you.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, David. It's crazy to think about. Like, when I think back to when I started working with you years ago, if you had asked me whether or not I'd be going on a world tour, I'd be writing two more books. So this will be my fourth book, and doing some of the crazy things that I do now, having a top 1% podcast, all of these things, I would have been like, you're crazy. But once I really tapped into putting the vision before the fear and really focusing in on the vision, being consistent, and refusing really to ever go back to the way that I was before. That was one of the key components, was refusing to go back to my old life. I had seen too much, David. It's like,
Yeah.
once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. So I just started exploring more and more through the work that we were doing together. Like, how can I make this bigger? How can I really start expressing who I really am through my work? And so last October, I know that I had mentioned it to you, David, I want to go on a world tour. Like, I'm like, if it's good enough for Taylor Swift, it's good enough for me, that I can do pop-ups, that I can show up and really serve. And that's something that I really want to point out. After years of being behind my computer, something that I was really longing for was to get out and meet these women, because since my business is online, I very rarely get to meet my ladies in person and meet their babies. Yes, I get the
Yeah.
pictures. Yes, they will show up on the podcast, but I wanted to be in the room. I wanted to really be there and to create a different level of impact, because it's super easy to put up an ad or to put out a course, all these things, but to really be in the room with people was where I felt myself being pulled. So starting in March of this year, we kicked off the Fearlessly Fertile Live World Tour in California. So we've been touring all over North America. We've gone into Canada. And just a few weeks ago, I got home from the European leg of the tour. And then we're looking early January 2025 to be in Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, and quite possibly Dubai by popular demand.
Yes, yes.
So it's just fantastic. Like, the idea that I didn't have to just accept business as usual, but to create from my vision really blew things up. So we're also looking at making a documentary, and it's just, it blows me away. There are times when I have to sit back and be like, what? This is my life? And the answer is yes, but that's exactly the life that I created, which is also very interesting. Like, one of the greatest things that I learned from you was to be a creator in my life. And it would have been really hard for me to say, 15 years ago that I was at all a victim, but that was definitely the small-minded way I had been looking at myself, my fertility journey, and ultimately in my work. I thought that things happened to me, not for me.
Yeah.
But the work that we did together really helped me crush that.
Yeah, that's an interesting statement because um, the truth is most of us, that's the mindset that we're exposed to our whole childhood, is a victim mindset. And not necessarily like a victim that you were molested or robbed or murdered or something like that, although that does happen. But a victim in the sense that everything outside of yourself has more power over you than you have over it. And that's not how we've been created. Actually, it's the exact opposite that's true. And when a person steps into that, they're able to create the situations like you're creating, in your life. And one of the things that impresses me about you the most is how open you've been to what you need to hear to make the changes that you need to make. And that's been one of the most fun things of working with you, because with every level that you go, there's something else that shows up that is another lesson that levels you up to the place. And we both know how big your goals are that you have, and you're right on track for going for those goals. Is there one thing, or was it just a culmination of things that opened you to start saying yes to what starts to show up? Because most people don't. They don't say yes. They say no. They're intimidated. They're scared. They're afraid. They don't have support from other people. Was it one thing, or was it like just a culmination of things where you started saying yes to what the universe is bringing you?
David, I think one of the most powerful things that really shook me out of the smallness that I was living in was the absolute terror that I had of living with regret. And that was something that I just was like, dude, I have been given so many things in my life, and if I didn't use those to their absolute and complete fulfillment, I would feel regret. Now, that's not perfectionism, it is gratitude. Like, it was like, oh, I have been given this voice. And and it's kind of funny because I used to think that being a prosecutor was working against me in my work, but it's actually one of the greatest gifts that God ever gave me. It was being a prosecutor for as long as I had been was such a gift. It was such preparation. Because to your point earlier, I had the good fortune of working with sexual assault survivors. And the ones that made such an impact on me were the ones that never thought of themselves as victims. Under the
Wow.
law, the state of California called them victims, but they saw themselves as survivors. And I would go back to all of these lessons that I had picked up all along the way, these little pearls of wisdom. And I would say, if that woman could survive that, I can write this email. Kind of it sounds silly, but it's like
Yeah.
everybody has their own limitation and their own challenges that they're having to work through. But for me, ultimately, it was a fear of regret that I hadn't used my life to the largest level of fulfillment that I could. I knew that I was articulate, I could write, I could speak, I could do these things. And I'm like, if I don't use these gifts, if I don't use them, then what am I doing? What am I going to do? Go sit and watch Netflix? Like, I'd rather go out and serve and feel really good about that and receive in kind. And so, as much as I saw that, as much as I was giving, I was also receiving. And then it got really fun, David.
And then it got really fun. Well, you just did buy a brand new house, didn't you?
I did. I'm sitting in it right now. And you know, the craziest thing, David, I was in the move. I was looking through some of my old vision boards. And what's crazy about this house is it is the perfect mix of two places I imagined myself living. There was this beautiful Art Deco building in San Francisco, which I don't live in California anymore, thank goodness. And then there was this other place in Texas where I now live that I loved. And when I found this house, it was the perfect mix of both. And I was like, man,
Nice.
I manifested this. And it was easy, David.
Yeah, it was easy. It's one of the easiest transactions that I've actually seen in a long time. Like, you found it, you did it, everything's done.
Barely involved. Yeah, I was barely involved. I was on the road, David. I was signing papers in Edinburgh. Like, it was so crazy. I didn't know that people just sort of did that.
Yeah.
And I did it.
That's cool. That's awesome. Well, I couldn't be happier for you. And I'm really glad for you to share the story with everybody. There's two things. One is, if you see yourself wanting to build a business and grow like Rosanne has, please reach out to us. We have an Art of Success that's going to be launching in October. You're more than welcome to join that with us. But even more importantly, if you are trying to get pregnant, or you know somebody that's trying, Rosanne, how do they get a hold of you or to get one of your books or something?
My books are all over Amazon, Barnes and Noble.
Rosanne Austin, yes?
Yeah, it's actually from maybe2baby.com is where they can find me. Or I'm very active on Instagram. So if they just search at Rosanne Austin Fertility, they'll find me.
Okay, perfect. Very good. And you'll help them get pregnant.
Oh yeah, I do it all the time. Do it every day, David. And I have to tell people listening to this too, that my journey with you started with Art of Success. And I just love it. It resonated for me so much. And what I would encourage people to do if they're listening to this is just say yes. Just say yes. Because you're going to come out on the other side of this knowing a part of yourself and knowing more about what you can be, that it's absolutely going to whet your appetite for more. And it really, like, when you're in the Neagle sphere, it becomes very, I don't know, I wouldn't say addictive. If there was like a good version that had a wonderful connotation to it, it would be that. You learn so much. You know, I'm part of the TEM group. And one of the things that I love is it doesn't matter that I do 7 figures easily in my business. I am still on every single one of those calls because it gives me that boost. It helps me get focused every single day. It's just part of who I am now. So I'm super grateful.
Well, the addictive part is that you're winning, right? I mean, if I go back to the days when I worked with my mentor, you couldn't have pulled me away with anything, because I was winning like I never won before when I started working with somebody that could show me how to do it. Like, I remember the first time, because I worked with Proctor, and he said to me, by working with me, I'll probably save you 10 years. He actually probably saved me 30. I mean, because there's things that I would have never done without the suggestion of him and the experience that he had, because his way of seeing the world was not mine. So when I learned and I began to do it myself, my way of seeing things is not other people's. Like, we're indoctrinated into the way the world works. And if somebody doesn't come along and go, hey, you can win faster, easier, better if you do this, and they're open to it and they really want it and they do it, then they start winning and they're like, holy shit, wait a minute. What's going on here? That wasn't supposed to happen. This is crazy. And they start winning and winning and winning and winning.
It's that kind of consistency. And it was that massive paradigm shift where I am consistently hearing a different reality. And doing that and having that level of consistency that you cannot possibly have when it's DIY. Like, I always tell women, DIY is for freaking amateurs. If you're not
Yep.
serious about having this baby, we can't, like, this isn't for you. I always am very clear. I only work with women who are committed to having a baby in the next 12 months. Because if you're not serious about that, you're not going to do this work. I would say the same thing about entrepreneurship. Like, when I made the commitment to do the work with you, I knew I was going next level because I had selected somebody, because I was very careful. It really mattered to me that you had proven over decades that you knew what you were talking about and that you knew how to teach. And that's why, to this day, even when we work together, like, I keep a beginner's mind. You're never going to hear me say, "Oh, I've heard that before. I've done that before." I'm like, nope, not going back to that place. I don't care if you're asking me the basic question of what do I want. I am going to think about that as a beginner again and really dig in, because the more you put into this, the more comes out. And when you're serious about what you're doing, you can't lose. And we can't lose with David Neagle.
Yeah. We're born to be a success, and success is easy. And I can show you how to do that. And
Yes.
Rosanne can show you how to do that with a baby. So listen, thank you very much. I know how busy you are. I really appreciate you taking some time out and talking to our people. And it just excites me to no end to see the positive impact that you're going to make in the world, especially since now we're in a world where underpopulation is becoming a real thing. Like,
Yep.
there's a reason that you're here, and I'll bet dollars to donuts it's bigger than you think right now. Just gonna put that out there.
I have a feeling, David. I share that vision with you. So thank you. And thank you for all that you're doing and helping people realize their dreams. I know that everything that you have done for me and the impact that you have had on my life is helping me live my dream life today. So thank you for that.
That's awesome. You're welcome. You're very welcome. And we will talk to you soon. Bye, everybody, from the Successful Mind Podcast. We'll see you soon.